Storytelling isn't just for the movies. In this information commoditized AI world that we're living in, storytelling can help you stand your brand apart. It can help you attract better clients into your business, and it can help you build a loyal audience, even if it's small. You see, most coaches are going about storytelling all wrong, and they're missing one key thing that I'm about to walk you through in this video. And this ball has nothing to do with it. This is an acupuncture ball I was just rolling out my forearms with. But speaking about good storytelling, this reminds me of the Harry Potter movies. You ever see, what is the game they called like Squiddish or something where they have to catch that ball? That's what it makes me think of. Anywho, why does storytelling work in business? First of all, humans make buying decisions emotionally first, logically second. Stories will bypass resistance. They build trust and they make you memorable. And they can act as a bridge, like an epiphany bridge. I think Russell Brunson talks about in Expert Secrets, the epiphany bridge story. It acts as a bridge that helps people go from maybe feeling stuck or in that struggle to where they want to be, the desire, the aspirational outcome. I remember when I first started to figure this out, this was around 2019, and I had owned a gym in South Florida. And to grow a gym, it didn't really require a lot of content per se. I was out in the community networking. I ran some Facebook ads. I was starting to get into speaking on different stages locally and on television. And I remember when I started to post content online, trying to get online clients, I was doing like a workout, like here's how to do squats, or here's a quick Tabata, or a mindset tip, or a nutrition tip. And it wasn't until one day, which by the way, that worked a little bit in 2019, but really quickly in 2020 when like hundreds of thousands of people went online and they were all sharing tips, and it got commoditized really, really quickly. And so I found that it wasn't really working. Like I would get likes, I would get comments, I would get people being like, "That's such an awesome workout, thank you." Nobody was really buying from me, and I was like, what gives? And so one day I did a live masterclass. And in that masterclass, I just told a story. And it was a story about my electrocution accident when I was a firefighter. I was doing, that's a story for another day, but I told the story about being electrocuted in the house fire. And I remember so many people reaching out to me being like, "Oh my God, I had no clue. That's so amazing." And it stood out to them how I was this overweight firefighter. I got electrocuted, had a near fatal accident, and I was able to bounce back, get myself back in shape, and it inspired me to help others. All of a sudden, people wanted to work with me, not because I was the expert, right? There's plenty of other experts, and I was previously posting expert information, but because they connected to my story of perseverance, and they too saw themselves in a different way within my own story. And so I want to walk you through ways that you can do it. But first, there's a really big mistake that I see coaches make when they're storytelling. First, they're telling random stories instead of strategic ones. And so I'm going to walk you through a couple ideas that you can implement on telling strategic stories that are going to actually lead somewhere. They focus on themselves instead of making like their audience the hero. And I believe it's from Story Brand, where Donald Miller talks about making your customer the hero. And I see a lot of clients trying to, not maybe purposely, but a lot of coaches making themselves the hero versus their ideal client. And then, of course, and I'm super guilty of this, but there's what I call the rambling diary problem versus like a structured, well-told story. Definitely guilty of being the rambler because it happens sometimes. So I'm going to give you a 3-part storytelling framework to help you not be the rambler, to help you not tell random stories, but to tell strategic ones that will connect with your ideal clients and help them move towards wanting to work with you in your business. Now, there are many storytelling frameworks. In fact, I probably have at least 15, but there's like 3 core frameworks that I use on a regular basis. This is one of them. And so the first framework that I'll give you here is hook. You want to be able to grab attention in the first sentence. Absolutely freaking key. I'll give you some examples of this in just a minute, but the second part of the framework is struggle versus turning point. What is a relatable moment or tension or problem that mirrors your audience's pain? And what was the turning point that you figured out in the story, or if you're telling a client story that they figured out. And then what was the resolution in their lesson, right? Tie this directly to what your offer or the belief that you need them to adopt is. So for example, oftentimes I'm trying to connect with coaches and business owners that are in the earlier stages of their business, because that's where a lot of our frameworks and things can really help them out. And so I'm aiming to talk to people that are typically bouncing between 5, 10, 15, 20K per month in revenue. They're in that low to mid 6-figure range. And so I think about stories that happened to me, moments, experiences when I was in that range. And so I think about posting content and posting and praying and all of the random results that I was getting. I think about just different moments of time. Back when I was a fitness coach and I was helping people in weight loss, I thought about stories like the firefighter story that would connect with people. It would connect with my ideal clients. And so you want to think about, what is a story that is going to be, that's going to resonate, that's going to connect, that's going to be interesting to people. Because you could tell an interesting story that doesn't resonate, and it's not going to do the job of converting. So you want to think of something that's going to be either a moment that you went through when you were in that same, let's just say, season that your ideal client's in, or maybe you're telling a client story. You just want to make sure that's the same type of client that you're looking to attract. So you want to tell parts of their story. And so I remember when I was going through the shift from owning a gym into becoming an online fitness coach. This was back in 2019. And I just remember, like, every day, like, this is what kind of the gurus told me to do. And so I listened. It was post every day, sometimes 2 to 3 times a day. And it was DM 50 people a day, which I'm going to be honest, I was never consistent with. And they were like, you're just going to grow. And I just remember feeling so burned out. I was like, dang, dude, this is not working for me. And in all fairness, some months I would do awesome. I would sign up a lot of clients and we were growing our business. Other months, it was like nothing. It was like crickets. And I remember this happening just so much that I was like, dude, I don't know if I could take any more of this. I think I might just like fold, throw in the towel and give in on this business. It's just not worth it. And then one day I decided that I was going to try something that I did back in my gym. So I had read a book by a guy named Jeff Walker, and it was called Launch. And I was like, I don't want to launch anything, but I wonder if I can use those same principles and I can promote a masterclass. And so what I ended up doing was a few different live videos. It was a series of mini masterclasses. And I remember I applied this like really good hook framework, kind of, that I'm about to walk you through. I'm going to give you an example in a second. And then that got a lot of people interested. And then on the masterclasses, I had a really good hook. And at the time, it was around losing belly fat, because that's what I was helping people with. And I told different stories. I told my story about the firefighter, as I alluded to. I told stories about clients that I've helped and like their struggles and how they overcome it, and the big turning points and insights for them. And all of a sudden, I had people leaning in. And I remember after that live series, it was a couple videos that I did. I had my inbox, I had like 13 or 14 inbound DMs. And at the time, that was like unheard of for me. I never had that many people reaching out, especially in just like a day or two. And I was like, I think I freaking cracked the code. And so that was how I figured that out, right? So you see, I kind of gave you an example of a story within a story. And so here's what I want you to do first. I want you to identify 3 different stories. The first one is I want you to identify your origin story, right? This is going to be why you do what you do. I like to think about this as the macro story to your brand. Why do you do what you do? What is your origin story? What was the problem that you were in? What was the maybe the low point for you? What was that turning point for you that started to change things? Maybe it was a mentor you hired, or a lesson you learned, or something that gave you that aha that you started to apply. What was the resolution? What result started to happen for you in your life? What was the ripple effect? Really get that story ironed out. The second story is a client success story that mirrors your client's journey. Again, if you're trying to attract say people that are trying to lose weight and get healthier, you want to tell a story about a client that mirrors that exact person. So that way when you're telling stories online, you're attracting more people that are like those type of clients. And then there's the belief shift story. This is going to be a story that changes the way they see their problem. So in my business now, I teach a lot of people about how to come up with the right messaging and how to use story to grow their business. And so I will often talk about how I realized it wasn't just about posting and praying and just marketing and just saying, putting stuff out there on the internet. It was about coming up with the right messaging, saying the right words in the right way to the right people, and positioning it in a unique way. Coming up with hooks that stop the scroll, coming up with stories that really stand out, coming up with call to actions that convert and move people forward. And I'll tell stories that help plant the seed of what I believe to be true. So I'm basically helping to give people my epiphany in their head so that they can think differently. You see, the world doesn't need more information. This is why Napoleon Hill famously wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. It's like you don't just do things and grow rich. Sometimes that can happen. You think first. And so we got to get people to think differently. And the way we do that is by shifting their beliefs. And so you want to have a story that helps do that. And again, I think Russell Brunson was talking about it perhaps in Expert Secrets, where he called it the Epiphany Bridge story, which is a very similar concept here. And then you want to start weaving these stories into your content, whether it's videos you're doing, emails you're writing, posts or reels or whatever it may be. Start to weave these stories in once or twice a week and watch how many more people get interested. So if you want to have this framework, I'll drop this doc below that has the framework in there. It should be around the description. You can click it and go. I'd love to hear a story that you share in your marketing, how it works out. Come back to this post, leave me a comment or shoot me a message, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye for now.